And Chicago, we have to help her win. Because we know that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots of greed, trampling on our way of life. The truth is, Don, you cannot love this country if you only fight for the wealthy and big business.
All right, folks, what you just heard was AOC's speech at the DNC convention on night one, which is in Chicago. It has descended into chaos outside. There's rioters everywhere. You call them protesters. I think they're rioters when they're fighting people and trying to break private property, personal property, all kinds of property. Okay, but that's what's going on over there in Chicago. But she delivered this speech, and I guess she's trying to talk about Donald Trump, but sounds like she's talking more about the New York City Mayor, Eric Adams, because I don't know who she's talking about lining their pockets. I mean, Donald Trump's personal net worth dropped while he was president. Okay, he is worth less than when he was going into office. Why don't we look at Eric Adams' financials? There's a guy that, I mean, he's out all night. He's out getting wine, dine, and pocket lined from what it seems, what we see, he was out all the time. But, AOC doesn't even pay attention to her district. Otherwise, she would have known that Eric was hanging out at this Boyd in her district in the Bronx that had allegations of prostitution, allegations of drug and narcotics use and straw donor schemes and all these crazy allegations that are in all these lawsuits. And they ended up closing, and AOC never did an investigation there. The state attorney general didn't. The New York City Police Department won't because the brother of the police commissioner owned the place. And of course, we have nothing from the Department of Buildings, the State Liquor Authority, the fire department. So what's next? If it's not congressional, it has to be federal. So AOC, you can't even do your own job. And with that, welcome to the Sal Greco Show, the latest edition of the Sal Greco Show. So we were talking about Eric Adams, so I figured we touch up on why maybe AOC forgot to mention Eric Adams. Now, here's the article from the New York Times from the other day. Eric Adams and his campaign received subpoenas in a federal investigation. A new round of federal grand jury subpoenas and investigation. Mayor Eric Adams and his 2021 fundraising seeks a wide range of information. Here's Dana Rubenstein and William K. Raspbaum from New York Times wrote that federal prosecutors investigating Mayor Eric Adams of New York and his 2021 campaign have served a new round of grand jury subpoenas in a long-running corruption inquiry, issuing them to Mr. Adams himself, to City Hall, and to his election committee, according to 4 people with knowledge of the matter. The 3 subpoenas were served in July and seek an extensive range of materials, including text messages, other communication documents, 2 of the people said. The subpoenas contain similar language and seek information in a number of areas, including travel by the mayor, his aides, and others, as well as fundraising. They appear likely to sweep in information related to some aides to the mayor and people who worked both in City Hall and on Mr. Adams' 2021 campaign, the people said. The new subpoenas came nearly 9 months after the corruption investigation first entered public view, meaningfully altering the city's political landscape. Since then, the mayor has become a political target with sagging approval ratings and at least 3 challengers in the 2025 Democratic primary. The full scope of the investigation remains unclear, but it has focused at least in part on whether Mr. Adams and his campaign conspired with the Turkish government to receive illegal foreign donations and pressure the fire department to sign off on Turkey's new high-rise consulate in Manhattan despite safety concerns. It also has examined free flight upgrades Mr. Adams received from Turkish Airlines. Mr. Adams has repeatedly denied wrongdoing and maintained that he and his campaign have scrupulously followed the law. 2 lawyers representing him in his campaign said in a statement on Thursday that over the past 9 months, they have conducted their own investigation into the conduct that they believe is the focus of the federal inquiry. Both lawyers in the past 2 decades oversaw public corruption prosecutions for the same federal prosecutor's office that is now investigating the mayor. Their examination has included an evaluation of campaign documents and analysis of tens of thousands of electronic communications and witness interviews, the statement said. To be clear, we have not identified any evidence of illegal conduct by the mayor, the lawyers Brendan R. McGuire and Boyd M. Johnson III said in a statement. To the contrary, we have identified extensive evidence undermining the reported theories of federal prosecution as to the mayor, which we have voluntarily shared with the U.S. attorney, a.k.a. spin, spin, spin. The lawyers said they were responding to the new subpoenas. We continue to look forward to a prompt and just resolution of this investigation, they said. The subpoenas, which have not been previously reported, also came amid some indications that the public corruption investigation may be nearing its conclusion. Prosecutors and FBI agents have recently been contacting lawyers for witnesses they interviewed earlier this year with follow-up questions to clarify certain details, and they have sought to expedite interviews with some other witnesses. 4 people with knowledge of the outreach have said. Spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York and the FBI, which are conducting the investigation, declined to comment. Neither Mr. Adams nor any other administrative officials or campaign staffers have been accused of wrongdoing. It is possible the investigation could conclude without charges being brought against the mayor or any of his aides. His predecessor, Bill de Blasio, endured lengthy and well-publicized federal and state criminal investigations focused on his campaign fundraiser, but those ended with no charges. He won re-election in 2017. In the federal investigation, Mr. de Blasio, at least one senior official from City Hall and one from his campaign received grand jury subpoenas, a development that prompted his chief counsel, Maya Wiley, to issue a statement at the time saying, City Hall has been subpoenaed. Those subpoenas were issued nearly a year before that investigation concluded in an unusual announcement by federal prosecutors from the Southern District, the same office investigating Mr. Adams that harshly criticized Mr. de Blasio. The mayor's spokesman, Fabian Levy, the propaganda minister, noted that Mr. Adams, a retired police captain, had a career in law enforcement before politics and has been clear over the last 9 months that he will cooperate with any investigation underway. Nothing has changed, he added. It is unclear what prompted a new round of subpoenas. Grand juries operate in secret, and federal law bars prosecutors and federal agents from speaking about subpoenas or the materials or testimony that the subpoenas seek. The investigation into Mr. Adams and his campaign began in 2021 before Mr. Adams took office as mayor and continued in secret until the past fall. 2 people with knowledge of his origin said it may have been effectively dormant during some of that time, but later heated up, with FBI agents and prosecutors gathering enough evidence to persuade a federal judge to sign several search warrants that were executed on the same morning in November of last year. The warrants included one for the Brooklyn home of Brianna Suggs, who was then the mayor's chief fundraiser. The agents who searched the home emerged with 2 laptop computers, 3 iPhones, and a manila folder bearing Mr. Adams' name, according to a search warrant and other documents obtained by the New York Times. The warrant made clear that the raid was part of a broader federal investigation involving the Turkish government. On the same day as the search of Mrs. Suggs' home, FBI agents also searched the homes of Rana Abbasova, an aide in Mr. Adams' International Affairs Office, and Cenk Okal, a member of his mayoral transition team and former executive of Turkish Airlines, from which Mr. Adams received free flight upgrades. Mr. Adams, an avid traveler, has praised the airline, telling a Turkish pro-government publication that the airline is my way of flying. When he was Brooklyn Borough President, Ms. Abbasova served as his liaison to Brooklyn's small Turkish community, a position that no longer exists in the Borough Hall of Mr. Adams' successor, Antonio Reynoso. Just days after the searches, FBI agents stopped Mr. Adams outside an evening event at New York University, asked his security detail to step aside, joined him inside the SUV, and presented him with a warrant to seize his electronic devices. While Mr. Adams has often noted that he urges his staff to follow the law, his campaign has been dogged by repeated straw donor investigations that have resulted in criminal charges, though he has not been accused of involvement. Several senior members of his administration have also been the subject of a wide range of investigations. In July, the city's campaign finance board released a draft order of the mayor's 2021 campaign that described an operation marked by disorganization and opacity. The campaign failed to disclose who paid for 158 fundraisers, reported expenditures, which, based on the documentation provided so far, were not campaign-related, accepted anonymous contributions, and exceeded spending limits. The draft audit was first reported by The Gothamist. Last September, the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin L. Bragg indicted Eric Ulrich, Mr. Adams' former senior advisor and former buildings department commissioner, accusing him of taking bribes. The case is still pending. Timothy Pearson, that thug, another senior advisor to Mr. Adams, has been sued 4 times this year for sexual harassment and is facing 2 investigations by the city's independent anti-corruption agency. And in February, the FBI searched 2 homes owned by Winnie Greco, no relation to myself, thank God, another senior advisor to the mayor, in a separate investigation by the FBI and federal prosecutors in Brooklyn. Well, folks, I just wanted to read this article and show you the New York Times article, because in the prior episode I did cover this, but this is more in depth. You could see how Eric's lawyer is trying to spin this, and you could see how this is a wide-ranging, sprawling investigation. Now, I understand it did bring up that the former mayor, the incompetent Bill de Blasio, he also was under a federal investigation, and they did question him as well. But unlike Bill de Blasio, Eric Adams, they are targeting many people around him. And the problem with him, more so than Bill de Blasio, if you remember, Eric Adams has this cast of characters around him that are, we have like Timothy Pearson. He himself was in 4 federal sexual harassment lawsuits, who goes around saying, "Where's my crumbs?" and is a thug. I don't know how this guy would be able to testify to anything. I mean, he very clearly has been involved in numerous allegations of corruption in the Eric Adams administration. There's other people we are hearing that have also been subpoenaed. Also, rumors of NYPD executives being subpoenaed. So the actual investigation, what they're actually looking at, is not really known. It seems like they're looking at this Turkish embassy, what happened with that, but also, the United States attorney, he's not talking. So usually this is just, you're going to find out when the time comes. But I still believe that the problem is Eric himself, who could plead the 5th, because that's probably the best thing to do, because Eric's going to go in there and not know who the hell said what about anything. That's the problem with all these investigations. So I still think that he's politically finished. Now, I also believe he'll probably get indicted, only because, everybody has their own sources. But again, it's more of the company you keep being the ultimate, hammer on this nail, unfortunately, for Eric Adams. Because who can you trust? And speaking of trusting, Eric Adams, besides being in a federal investigation, is in a sexual assault lawsuit under the Adult Survivors Act. And by the way, the victim does know who he is. Eric said he doesn't know who she is because he smears just about anyone and ever questions anything about him. So let's read this off and show you this article. Here's the article from the New York Times. Woman accusing Eric Adams of assault wrote about it years ago. Filing says, a former transit police department colleague of the mayor said she told 7 people years ago that he had sexually assaulted her in 1993, according to new court filings. By Emma G. Fitzsimmons, the New York Times. A woman who accused Eric Adams of sexually assaulting her in 1993 told 9 people about the encounter and documented her account in emails years ago, her lawyer said in a legal filing on Monday. The filing did not contain specific details about what the woman, Lorna Beach Mathura, said to each person or when she said it, but it said that she told 7 of the 9 people that he had assaulted her before the Adult Survivors Act took effect in 2022. That legislation opened a window for people to bring lawsuits over past sexual assaults. Ms. Beach Mathura provided 2 emails she sent in 2021 about the assault when Mr. Adams was running for mayor and before she had the ability to sue him under the new state law, according to the filing, which was a letter written to the judge, Richard G. Lattin, of the state Supreme Court. Mr. Adams has denied the allegations, and his allies have questioned her credibility and her history of filing lawsuits. Ms. Beach Mathura's past comments to people about the assault and written records could be central to the lawsuit. The mayor's legal team has been battling with her lawyer, Megan Godard, and court documents ahead of Ms. Beach Mathura's deposition, which is expected in September. The mayor's lawyer, Alex Spiro, confirmed that the emails were provided to the defense, but he said that they did not contain proof to support the accusations. He noted that they were sent to the rival campaign of Andrew Yang and to the New York Post when Mr. Adams had already become a prominent figure. Ms. Beach-Medora said she worked with Mr. Adams at New York City's Transit Police Bureau and asked him for help with her promotion, according to the 26-page complaint. When he requested oral sex and she declined, he forced her to touch his penis and ejaculated on her leg, the complaint said. The lawsuit is pending against Mr. Adams at a time when he is facing a federal investigation into his campaign fundraising and running for re-election in a competitive Democratic primary next year. New York Times reported last week that Mr. Adams and his 2021 campaign were served with a new round of grand jury subpoenas in the federal investigation in July. Mr. Spiro, who has represented Elon Musk and other high-profile clients, wrote a letter to the judge last week arguing that Ms. Beach-Medora was not providing enough information during the discovery process and continued to exhibit a pattern of delay and obfuscation. His letter also said that the plaintiff had not provided the date that the assault occurred in 1993 and that she appeared to be trying to backfill the details of her story, including asking for Mr. Adams' shift schedules from that year. Ms. Goddard's letter said it was the mayor's legal team that was not responding to requests for information, including basic employment records about whether Mr. Adams and the plaintiff worked together at the Transit Police Department. Ms. Goddard wrote that Mr. Spiro's letter contained false, inflammatory, and irrelevant statements and accused the mayor of seeking to discredit her client using every means available to him. The lawsuit seeks $5 million and names the police department and the Guardians Association, a fraternal organization of black police officers, as defendants. Mr. Adams was a leader in the Guardians at the time the assault was said to have occurred. Ms. Beach-Medora was sickened by Mr. Adams' run for mayor. The lawsuit said and appalled that he became so powerful and that he might become even more so. She now lives in Florida and has a history of filing lawsuits. She wrote a 52-page self-published book. That includes a petition she filed in the United States Court in 2013 when she represented herself in a lawsuit against the Miami-Dade County Public Schools Board over workers' compensation. Mr. Adams has strenuously denied the allegations, and the mayor's office has sent statements from his political allies criticizing the lawsuit. This did not happen. It did not happen, Mr. Adams said at a news conference in March. I don't recall ever meeting this person during my time in the police department. Two of the mayor's friends from the transit police, Charles Henry and Cliff Hollingsworth, said in interviews that they worked with the plaintiff, whose name was then Lorna Beach, at Transit Police District 34 in Coney Island in the 1980s. Mr. Adams said that he began his police career there in 1984. The lawsuit said that the plaintiff worked there from 1981 to 86 and ran into Mr. Adams years later and asked him for help with the promotion. Mr. Henry said he believed that Mr. Adams and Ms. Beach worked in Coney Island at the same time, though he said he could not be certain. There were not many black employees at the time, which is why he remembers Ms. Beach. Mr. Henry said he did not believe the allegation against the mayor. I know Eric, and he would never do that. Sure. I mean, they also said that he doesn't accept straw donor donations, and that's a lie, too. I mean, is there anything that's truthful coming out of Eric Adams' mouth that, ever? This lawsuit is a very big problem for Eric Adams. Eric Adams, who already, has problems with women, not only his administration, but the women in the street that just don't like, women voters in New York City, who don't want to hear about this swagger and the table of success and all this nonsense that Eric spews. This would be a problem with voters, but let's be honest. If the federal investigation isn't a political nail in the coffin for Eric Adams, this will be. Because this woman who did work with Eric Adams at Transit District 34 on Coney Island, a place I know very well that I used to work in Coney Island. It's not even a block and a half away from the 60th precinct on West 8th and Surf Avenue. But if this woman, who's being shunned by the city and browbeated by Eric's lawyers, who, by the way, New York City taxpayers are paying for, which is illegal under General Municipal Law 50K2, because we never got a reason why they're defending Eric Adams, who very clearly sexual assault does not fall under the scope of a police officer or New York City employee's duties. This case, which is they're trying to litigate it in the media, this is not the way it would go. But I commend the victims' lawyers, and I'm actually, disgusted by Kamala Harris, who was endorsed by Eric Adams, and she should condemn Eric Adams for his behavior here, because in the Democrat Party, don't we believe all women? And, with this DNC convention coming, it already started, and Eric Adams is headed there. He will be lobbying very hard for a pardon, and Kamala Harris should come out and promise that if Eric Adams is indicted or charged for any crimes, that there shall be no pardon, even under a President Kamala Harris. Also, this weekend, Eric Adams had more fiascos going on with him. And who better than Curtis Sliwa to explain it to you?
But this once in a lifetime mega event of Jake Paul, Mike Tyson.
With all this craziness going on, where do you think Eric Adams decided to go where he got booed by everyone there? He walked in with his entourage into the room where there was a press conference with Mike Tyson and Jake Paul promoting their upcoming fight. With all the craziness going on in the city, he walks in. They're all booing. Everybody is booing as he walks into the room. He's got this white shirt on with, mayor on the back. Like, well, you didn't know he was mayor, right? Guy has some problems there. And all these people are booing him. And Mike Tyson, his friend, is trying to calm down the crowd because you got to understand, Eric Adams, when he was an active police officer, provided security for Mike Tyson. That is against the rules of the NYPD. He should have been stripped of his rank and some suggest fired because Mike Tyson, remember, was a convicted felon for rape in Indianapolis. Meantime, a guy that is often mentioned here at WABC, Sal Greco, friend of Roger Stone, he was removed from the police department because they claimed he was associating with Stone, who in 2019 was charged with obstructing a congressional investigation and found guilty. Boy, is this a double standard. So you got to ask yourself, Nancy, what the hell would Mayor Eric Adams be doing walking in on a press conference between his friend Mike Tyson and Jake Paul for an upcoming fight? It's a stage fight. It's not going to be a real fight. And he must be a masochist now. People were booing him, and he was oblivious to it. With all the there's flooding going on in the city. Mr. Mayor, 911. Flooding in the city, and you're hanging out with Mike Tyson. What, were you sharing a blunt? Because, Tyson sells blunts now where it's legal. Oh, man. This guy is going. And it's all because of these subpoenas. He's probably saying to himself, I'm the greatest of all time. I really am. I want to be just like Mike Tyson.
Palestine will never die! Palestine will never die! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free!
So that last video you just heard or you saw is a rally or protest that took place in front of the courthouse in Fort Lauderdale, which was pro-Palestinian. And again, I don't know the percentage of true people of Arabic descent in that. I don't know if anybody in that crowd was truly from Palestine, but this is a phenomenon I see all over the country. Look, I don't disagree with your right to protest as long as it's peaceful. I just don't understand it. I don't understand this crowd. I don't believe there's truly many Arabic descent people that were outside that courthouse. I feel like these are misguided souls just looking for a cause to go scream and yell against the system. I understand that, but, I understand their anger, but I don't understand their reasoning behind any cause. If you want to be changing things, be the change. Run for office. Go and become a lawyer. Go become a federal agent. Go own a business. Sitting there while screaming about Palestine when you really don't have a stake in that at all, I just don't understand it. And that's just my take on it. And with that being said, here's an interview I did with Jason Burmis where we covered, of course, Eric Adams, New York City, the NYPD, and the corruption going on in the city and the NYPD. And then, of course, Governor Kathy Hochul and her speech at the DNC. Maybe they're highlighting her. They want to elevate her status in the Democrat Party. And Harvey Weinstein, he was in the news. All of that right now.
Want to be a part of the conversation? Then let us know on the TNT Radio Interactive Live Chat Room, lighting the fuse for freedom. TNT.
Even though the DNC is in Chicago, it's time to talk about that NYC connection. And to do so is everybody's favorite former NYPD officer, Sal Greco. Now, Sal, Kathy Hochul, she's on the list of the heavy hitters. She's up there with Hill and Bill Dog. She's up there with the Barack star, etc. Even Joe Biden, who God knows if they're going to wheel him out or how they're going to get that going. Probably shoot him up pretty good, give him 15 minutes. Maybe even let him phone it in, tape style. I don't know what's happening there. But Hochul, they're giving her a prime time spot. Now, as far as I've seen, and I'm Exodus. I'm gonna be a New York expat now for 4 years coming up in October. She hasn't done anything that anybody's happy about. I mean, anybody. I don't know if we have free and fair elections there, that Lee Zeldin isn't the governor at this point. I'm no Zeldin fan, at that point, but I still find it really hard to believe she got it. But they're rolling her out. I mean, obviously, look, I get it. It's a big name state. They want her to be the identity politics replacement of Cuomo, the grab-ass king, who's probably going to get his money back, by the way. He's suing all the way. So what are your thoughts on this? Is this putting her on the global stage and maybe running her out as the governor, putting her somewhere else? Or is she going to be a longtime governor of this state?
Donald Trump was born a New Yorker, but ended up a fraud, a philanderer, and a felon. He wasn't raised with the New York values that I know. He never had to worry about childcare costs or groceries or rent. He never had to worry about anything or anyone but himself. Trust me, America, if you think you're tired of Donald Trump, talk to a New Yorker. We've had to deal with him for 78 long years. The fraud, the tax dodging, the sham university, the shady charities. We've seen him stiff contractors, rip off workers. He abuses women, brags about it, and then takes away their rights. And New Yorkers are sick of it.
She bought her way in. I mean, she's a prolific fundraiser as far as like high-ranking Democrats go. She fundraises all the way out in California. I mean, she rakes in a lot of money. I mean, her husband was a big-time attorney at one point in the U.S. government. He was in the U.S. Attorney's Office. So she's a prolific fundraiser. She also today made news for issuing a governor's warrant on Harvey Weinstein, who must now remain in New York State until his retrial of his rape case, because California was trying to extradite him back to California to serve his sentence that he was found guilty of over there. So she did do something today.
No, let's talk about that, because the Weinstein case, first of all, he won some of his appeals on the convictions, but there were other cases also in California. So does that mean that he's out of jail in New York right now awaiting that, or is he in jail still? He's out of jail, isn't he?
He's in custody in a hospital under the watch of the courts because he's technically still facing the conviction. So he's still supposed to be in jail for California, but he's here facing the retrial of a rape. And I commend his lawyer, who's only known for two things, Artie Aidala. He got Lawrence Taylor off his case, and he got this appeal overturned. Other than that, he's a bagman for Eric Adams, and probably right now he doesn't want to even know who Eric Adams is. But Artie Aidala did get that overturned. It was one of the few things that it was the way that the original trial was a little bit of a railroad job. Even though we don't like Harvey Weinstein, we still need to be fair. But, in a retrial, how is this going to go? Because remember, he still has to go back to California and serve out that sentence. I don't know if they're going to make it concurrent if he's found guilty. But right now he's under the court. He's in a hospital being watched by the courts because he's facing the trial. So he's in custody at this moment.
All right, Sal. So there's a few things I want to hit on here. First of all, when we talk about Weinstein's conviction, like you said, I think he's a terrible person, did terrible things. But when you do look at the court cases, especially with some of the women that made allegations, they had long time relationships with him after the fact, calling him honey, baby, trying to score jobs, etc., and talking to him like a friend. There were problems there for sure. Two, I would say this, it's so weird that when guys like, I don't know, Weinstein or say a Dennis Hassard, every time they're in court or get convicted, all of a sudden their health just degrades like that. I mean, it declines like crazy. They're in a walker. They're in a wheelchair. Sometimes there's the oxygen machine. Just so odd how that happens. And you mentioned the lawyer, and I would be remiss. You mentioned the Taylor case. A lot of people forget about that. Well, Taylor was caught with, I believe, like a 14-year-old prostitute at a La Quinta Inn. Hey, I want to be fair. I like the New York Giants too, but let's take a look. I mean, this is the underbelly of not only New York, but the world, folks. And speaking of that underbelly, and speaking of the DNC, Eric Adams going to the DNC. Now, as far as we know, according to you, he doesn't have a spot up there as a speaker. I think they might roll him right out there. I mean, 50 Cent's not going to be by his side, but you might get a Megan Thee Stallion. It might be a little hip-hop parade. You get him in a nice white suit. He likes those white tuxes. We've seen him in there. Maybe he goes a little gangster. Maybe he wants to bring it in purple. I don't know, but it could happen. You think he's over there trying to cut some deals with these current investigations and possible prosecutions, no?
Of course. He already tried a couple of weeks ago with Kamala Harris. He promised that he would deliver the black faith vote to Kamala Harris. The churches that Eric likes to go on Sundays and scream that God ordained him to be the mayor. That crowd, he's going to give that crowd to Kamala Harris. And in exchange for that, he's going to want his pardon. But in all honesty, he's toxic. I mean, I understand, Jason, that he's traveling around in the city, and not too far behind him, he's got a federal tail on him now. So I don't know the extent of how serious this is with him, because the more I'm hearing, the more serious it sounds. Him going to Chicago, he's definitely going to lobby to get pardoned. He is terrified. He had an event this weekend of a flag-raising incident or a political parade for India, but he kept mentioning it as if it was Pakistan. He mentioned it 3 times.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, that's kind of a big India and Pakistan, not in love, folks. It's it's a little bit more than like the Yankees-Mets rivalry. I'm just going to throw it out there. It's kind of a big deal. That being said, do you think he makes it to the next election cycle, or just like Cuomo, does he step down and somebody eventually takes that spot before an election?
I don't see him making it. I think this is actually like speeding up, because they have to wrap this up only because U.S. Attorney only has 18 months with a grand jury. His term might be coming to an end because, look, let's face it, Trump wins, he doesn't have a job. Trump doesn't have to necessarily keep Damian Williams, even though Damian Williams is a pretty good attorney in the U.S. Attorney of Southern District. So he's got to make a move. He's got to bring this indictment, or the whole thing has to fall apart, one or the other. But, of course, Jason, is all kinds of subpoenas flying all around. His staff, allegedly now the NYPD upper echelon, the Con Sofrito crew, they're, those guys, I love to hang out with all the criminals and felons. So this is expanding. So it's extending. It's scary to even say that. And I understand that his staffers, people that work on his administration, they're calling around looking for other jobs. So they know something that we don't know. So him going there, Jason, reeks of help me, please, pardon me, keep these guys off my back, because he has to answer those subpoenas and he can't testify, Jason, because whatever he says that doesn't add up to whatever it is that they know will become a perjury charge.
We're about to hit a break for the headlines. You can check Sal Greco at the Sal Greco over on X, and of course the Sal Greco Show. When we come back, I do want to talk crime and New York State, New York City in particular. Where will it be headed if, in fact, Eric Adams is basically superseded? Can it get better over there? We're going to come back. More TNT after this.
TNT.
We are back with Sal Greco. Never a dull moment. Literally, what we were talking just during the break, Sal, you were discussing skull and bones found by the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, listen, I have no idea the details of the story. It's a headline. We get the skull and bones. Who knows? Usually a body exposed. I don't give it much more than 18 months. It is New York. You never know. It's Hudson River, maybe preserving it. A lot of preservatives. And you get pickled in the Hudson River. Let's be honest about that. Anyway, where are we with crime in New York City? I honestly, getting my hair cut just last week, I was talking to the woman. She had driven down from Iowa with the family, first time down in Lower Manhattan, et cetera, et cetera. They got by. You mentioned safest big city in America. Honestly, biggest city, at least when we're talking about size and relative congestion. And I would argue probably one of the safer ones. I've been to a lot of big cities. Right now, the DNC is in Chicago. Give me NYC over Chi-Town any day of the week. That's just me. But can it get better? Especially if you have somebody like Adams who steps down and kind of coronates another person of that level of corruption. And you have Hochul as governor. And unfortunately, I don't see a lot of ways out.
Well, there's a few moving parts here, because you remember, city council's an issue. The legislation of New York is an issue, because you could change the mayor, but you can't change the governor. You still have this, the state assembly headed by Carl Hastie as the speaker, who's too busy, partying all these boits up in the Bronx. Then you have the state senate. That's what's her name? Cousins. She's another one, Andrea Cousins Stewart, or I think she's another one that doesn't want to get involved in anything. So they can't change any legislation because it's one party rule. And then so here comes the mayor. You could do minimal things, kind of like this, personnel wise in the NYPD. We just had a vicious rape occur. We covered this last week in Coney Island, right? worked there, and I could tell you, I just got a phone call today from someone who said I was up on that boardwalk, Riegelman Boardwalk, which is Coney Island. It's the infamous boardwalk everybody sees whenever they show Coney Island. And there's usually cops and a Coney Island detail. This is where they flood the area. They've been doing this for every summer. It's a summer detail. They said it's the afternoon. No cops to be found. None. Now, in my day when I worked for almost 8 years. We had cops everywhere. They were not only standing around, walking around, we had a little gator and we had cars going in and out of those side streets to make sure that there's no fugaziness going on. Well, apparently now there are no cops there. And I'll tell you why. Here's the real reason. Eric Adams has mismanaged his police department through his corrupt police commissioner, Ed Caban, because when Eric Adams campaigned on, I'm going to be the mayor, I'm ex-cop, I know what I'm doing, he said he was going to take these administrative units and get rid of them. So the administrative units in NYPD, you would have what's called civilians, like secretaries, you call them PAAs, SPAs. They could handle paperwork. But what this guy did is all his homeboys, all the guys that hang out at the Conza Frito will all be in administrative roles. So then what happens? You're taken away to personnel that belongs in the street, because these are full-duty cops. They have a gun, they have a badge, they're not limited, they're not injured, so they could go out in the street. But no, they're going to be hiding away in some scam unit somewhere, because that's what this administration does. They hook up their boys. So instead of having this area flooded with cops, One Police Plaza is flooded with cops because they have to talk about watching, I don't know, the Sal Greco show on YouTube, be critical of them. That's the kind of stuff that you have in this administration. So when you have a clown as the mayor, you're going to get a circus. So he needs to get out of the way because he's bringing the circus to New York City. He needs somebody serious to become the mayor who will tackle these problems, whether or not city council or the state legislation wants to help him. There's always got to be a way. You got to get around it. If you see there's a mountain in front of you, go around it. Maybe you try to climb it, but you have to find a way, especially when you're beholden to the taxpayers. These poor people in New York City are being subjected to this corruption, crime. I love how this guy says the safest big city in America, and then he takes a rape and a shooting, a murder down the street from Gracie Mansion. But he says the safest big city in America. He can't even step in his own castle there, Gracie Mansion. This is and Central Park, which never had crime. Crime is all over the place in there. So he says the crime numbers are down. Since he became mayor, Jason, 27%, I believe, the violent felonies are up. And misdemeanor assaults are through the roof. He doesn't want to talk about that. You know, that's when you get punched. It's not as bad as you go into a hospital, breaking your teeth. Someone punches you, that's an assault. We call that assault 3. Those are through the roof. He'll never tell you that, though, because remember, this is the safest big city in America. And remember, crime is down, jobs are up. The city's not surviving, it's thriving.
Well, I will say this. I haven't been there, post-COVID 1984. Last time I stepped foot in there was MSG, I think 2020, Bellator MMA. Great time. And even then, it was questionable. Now, with all that being said, where does that leave, citizen neighborhood watch type organizations? I saw on your feed you had Curtis Sliwa of the Guardian Angels out there. That's somebody who I really did become familiar with as a kid during the 80s because of the crime wave there, and they were getting much more press. When you went down to the city, especially you were in the Bronx, etc., Queens, you see a presence. In Lower Manhattan, you'd see a presence. I don't know where they're at today. Have they expanded? Are more people becoming a part of that organization? What do you see?
Well, Curtis, I know him. So Curtis has been, going to different, problem areas, or more so where the migrant shelters are. He's everywhere. Where there's a crime occurring, he shows up. He showed up to West 16th and Surf Avenue, where the boardwalk where that vicious rape was. He opened up the hole. I saw him in the hole. He says, look at this. They're camping out under here.
Look, I came in through the fence. You know there are other people, homeless, drug dealers, others, migrants coming in here on a regular basis. Come on, city. Close it up. Check on it. Do security. Have a cop come by here from time to time. Because you're not going to do it. We guardian angels will do it. Because homeless people need to be protected too in the city of New York.
Now, the city parks department is in charge, so they would have to put a fencing or try to, stop. There's a big hole. Put cement, do something. Their answer to him was, there's nothing we could do. That's always the answer in New York City. Don't ask us to just kick the can down the road. So he's taking initiative. He's going to have his own guardian angels go around there, and maybe they need to volunteer to patch up that hole. I mean, these are things that need to get done. You can't go down the street and worry about if you're going to get hit over the head with a pipe, which is what one of these illegals did, and also rape the guy's girlfriend. And I understand they were homeless, but that doesn't mean anything. They're still human beings. We don't discard people because they're homeless. Maybe we should go and help them instead of saying, just discard them because they're homeless. Because that's the easiest thing to do in New York City. So Curtis has taken that, and he's taken another thing where he goes around to these migrant shelters where Eric Adams is trying to force migrant shelters on these neighborhoods. The neighborhoods don't want them. So you need to, I don't know how this guy just thinks every neighborhood has to get migrants. But now he's targeting certain neighborhoods, Eric Adams, which is why, listen, this guy just has to go. I wish they just came down and said, all right, you're coming with us. And this sideshow finally ends. Maybe they pick him up in Chicago on Wednesday. People in New York City are screaming. But the problem also is, Jason, 20% of the electorate only vote in New York City. Only 20%. That's 80% that stay home. So if you don't vote, you can't complain if you think your vote doesn't count. And I understand it's a huge 7-1 or 7-2 Democrat to Republican, but then vote a better Democrat. And you can't have a corrupt guy like Eric Adams running around where the only thing he cares about is which nightclub he's going to get wine dined and pocket lined in next.
Well, and the next rap video he's going to be featured in, because I'm telling you, that's coming down the line. You can follow him at The Sal Greco. You can check him out, The Sal Greco Show, over on YouTube and beyond. Thank you so much, my man.
There you have it. I'd like to thank Jason Bermas for having me on his show. It's always a good time when we just talk turkey, if you know what I mean. And one more thing I want to say that's a little off topic on what this episode's been about, but man, Friday Night SmackDown, WWE. Roman Reigns, the OTC, the original tribal chief, to watch him take a beatdown from his cousins, the bloodline, Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa and the Tongans. Man, I haven't seen Roman Reigns take a beatdown in 4 years. That was something else. But don't worry, Survivor Series is coming, and I think we're going to get a bloodline versus old bloodline matchup at War Games. But with that being said, if you liked what you saw, you liked what you heard, now if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, share, put some comments on there. Tell me what you think. On Rumble, hit the Rumble button, comment, tell me what you think. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, like the episode, download it, share it with your friends. Here on the Sal Greco Show, I like to do things where I would like to hear some feedback from the people. Because remember, this is all for you. Remember, I could just sit on my hands, go, do something else during this time and not inform anyone of anything. But I thoroughly enjoy not only presenting valuable information, but exposing corrupt people. And with that being said, this is it for this episode. Tune in on the next episode of the Sal Greco Show. Have a great day. Have a great night. And I'll see you soon. Adios.